You were listening to episode 270 of the Game Deflators Podcast. My name's John, and I'm joined by Ryan.
Hey, everybody, here at the Game Deflators Podcast, we like to talk about games. We've recently picked up games we're currently playing, and we pal around in this week's Inflation Deflation Challenge.
So this week we're playing Palworld.
Like everyone else.
Yeah.
But
so,
way less time.
far less time than anybody else. But I think we got the gist of it, right? So
It's all about the gist here at the Game Deflators.
Exactly. So, I mean, you're not going to get a full-blown review here today. We're going to give our initial impressions and go from there. But first, you can find the Game Deflators on the GameDeflators.com, our out-of-date website. You can find us on YouTube. Just find the Game Deflators on there. We got old podcast episodes, unboxings, all that good stuff. We got to do an unboxing still of that D&D book set. You can also find us on YouTube Music, actually. Game Deflators is on there. Any podcast application will have us, so leave a 5-star review. Social media at Game Deflators on X and at The Game Deflators on Instagram, Facebook, and Threads.
And then
3 Threads posts.
Leave us a comment right now. Let us know your first impressions. This is as much as we played Palworld.
All right, man. So let's go into our recent pickups that we had. And I didn't have any. Well, I guess I did have a game pickup. I picked up Pal today, day of recording, or Palworld, I should say. But I did get the Dark Souls Complete Collection comic book series. So it's a Titan Comics. Really, it has all of the Dark Souls comics in one book. So pretty cool compendium. And then I also got the Animal Castle graphic novel, or compendium as well, like the first hard book of the comics. So everybody knows what Dark Souls is, but Animal Castle, if you've read Animal Farm, then you would know that this is a comic series that takes place after Animal Farm, and it kind of picks up where things left off, and has a story of the animals and their castle.
Yeah, that sounds like a crazy tale.
Dude, it's so good. And the fact that it kind of not mimics, I mean, it's really, you read the preamble part. It talks about how it's dictatorship and communism and all these other things, and takes the form of animals. And you have, I forgot if I recall, it's a pig named Napoleon.
Yeah.
And he pretty much helps to raise the farm animals against the farmer and all this other stuff and help them escape. And then he turns it into this communist society. And the entire thing is against that. The book was written in 1947, I think, or 1948. So it's pretty cool to have seen this kind of come out many years later. So that's what I got for that. What I'm currently playing, you'll be happy to know I continued to play Tales of Symphonia.
Yay!
So with Tales of Symphonia, it was actually really cool, the whole scene, and I was really invested in it last night when I was playing. So I go to Palm Costa, and we're told that we have to go to one of the shrines, basically. And so we get to that location, and the guy's like, no, it's going to cost you 100 million gold to be able to go up. You got to get me a special statue, and we'll kind of go from there. I'll get you a ticket, and then you can kind of go up. And then it turns out he has the book that the Chosen is supposed to be looking at. So we're like, all right, cool. So we go to one of these in-between places, right, where you can rest. I forget the name of the place of what it's called, but it's the giant hut that has a statue, and you can pray to Martel and everything there and rest, and it's kind of a in-between house type of deal. And so we get there, and they're like, oh yeah, Dor has asked that you come back, or Mayor Dor has asked that you come back because these individuals have been kidnapped on this pilgrimage, and we need you to rescue them. You go to rescue them, turns out it's a trap that Dor has set up, and when you go to confront him about it, that was Ryan's phone if you heard it. So when you go to confront Dor, it turns out that he's working with the Designs this entire time because they captured his wife, and she's been turned into one of the monsters, and that they'll give him a special medicine if he continues to give them money and contribute to their human ranches, or human ranch farm, I think is what it's called. Mm-hmm. And then one of I forget the name of the evil god that helps with the Designs, but his daughter had been killed a long time ago by Designs, and his daughter stabs him to kill him. It turns out it's this demon creature, and there's no cure, and the wife is just going to stay as is. So like really just this heartfelt, terrible story that's occurred. But it was just really cool to see like that whole interaction, and like it kind of closed the loop really quick, for that whole Palm Costa, and it sets it up for like Lloyd and the others to be extremely pissed off about the situation, everything that's occurred to his family, to his city, and will continue to occur unless something is done. So now we're in the mindset of like, well, it's time to go attack the ranch, basically. So that's where I stopped last night. I'm liking it, dude. I'm having a blast with it. And then funny enough, I messaged my brother because he played it years ago. I'm like, oh, take a look at what I'm playing. He's like, oh, I just beat that last month, actually.
Nice.
Like, re-beat it. So it's kind of cool to dive into this game for the first time and experience it as a net new title. And I'm excited to see where it goes from here. And then I guess in regard to playing as well, played in a Magic tournament again on Friday, and I ended up winning that. So I was telling you earlier, so I played Bant Poison, which apparently is now... Dude, I'm hitting all of these spec buys like pretty quick. Like, no kidding. So like the March of Swirling Mist I was telling you about, where you can phase out the monsters. I bought foil versions of that card like 6 months ago or whatever it was for maybe 75 cents a piece. They're now like $4 or $5 a piece for a non-foil version. Like little cards like that. I bought a black card the other day called like Preacher of Schism. I bought them at like 50 cents or 25 cents a card. They're $5 a piece now.
Dang.
So like all of these cards are going up $400.
So you're really reading the line.
Yeah, I think I'm doing a pretty good job of these spec buys and like what's in the market. So I'm excited to see like what the Karnov, I think it is, Murder at Karnov.
Oh, Murder at Karnov Manor.
Yeah,
I'm excited for that. That's going to be a cool set. I'll be interested to see how those new play packs work.
Yeah, me too. And then bringing Wither back is also really cool in Magic. I'm excited to see Wither back in gameplay.
I don't think I've ever played with Wither.
So Wither, your creatures deal combat damage in -1/-1 counters.
Oh, no, I have dealt with that before.
Yeah, and so when you have people that are like, oh yeah, my creature's indestructible, you can't beat it. It's like, okay, cool. Well, you're 5/5 indestructible.
I feel like that doesn't come up that often.
It
Indestructible
does.
is probably like the one that, I mean, you play way more than I do. I feel like Indestructible is like one of the least tags that I've seen on cards.
Well, not really. There's like several cards that are out now, or that came out in the Kamigawa block or Kamigawa set that came out, and it's like
That's a great
one
set.
green, and your creature gets hexproof and indestructible, right? So there are cards that do that. Now Exile obviously handles indestructible stuff with no problem, but when it comes to like one-on-one indestructible, Wither's fantastic. So I'm excited for that and to see what comes of that. But so I played Bant Poison, which is really cool. It's basically it's now a top 4 deck. Like it's definitely tier 1 style deck, and it's just like aggro poison with the ability to kind of use different cards to proliferate poison counters and get the 10 counters a lot quicker than normal. And I liked it, dude. It was a lot of fun playing with that. I think the next thing I'm going to play is Rakdos Reanimator. I'm going to have to borrow some cards from some of the guys I play with at the store to do that. But I've got, I would say, like out of the 60 cards, I'm missing like 8, or not even that, like 6. So it'll be pretty cool to play with that too. But yeah, that's where I am with that.
Nice.
So did you pick up anything?
So this was a weird week for me for gaming stuff, mostly because it was AGGQ, and I watched that pretty much all week as much as I could to get in as many runs. So I didn't make a whole lot of time for gaming. I did pick up Yakuza 0 on Game Pass and started that up just to check it out. So, funny thing, Game Pass this week. So, obviously, we're playing Palworld, which is available on Game Pass, but not at the tier that I'm subscribed to. And I didn't want to unsubscribe just for Palworld. But also, Game Pass, like any other subscription service, and this will kind of tie into some things we're talking later, they cycle in and out what's available on there. So, I had this great idea about 2 weeks ago. I was like, hey, it's the beginning of the year. I don't know what to play right now. Bug Fables is no longer on Game Pass. What's on here that I could play? John, for a third time, I booted up Persona 4 Golden.
Oh my God.
Yep.
Is that even on the list, sir? Oh, you were surprising me with that today.
Funny story.
Yeah.
So I was going to try to play through all of Persona 4 quietly without saying anything about it, and then be like, ha, I beat Persona 4. Kind of like when I did Pokemon.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it dropped off of Game Pass on Tuesday.
How long was it on there for?
Like since it got put on there, I think was like maybe a year ago or more.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
But it's like I hadn't even downloaded it to play it until like 2 weeks ago. So I played it for like a week and a half. I got like 12 hours in. And then they took it away, and I was like, I'm not paying $20 for this right now. This will make a good story. So just know at any time in the future, I might beat Persona 4.
Hey, you might
surprise everyone.
You might beat Blue's Clues too. I mean,
Right?
we didn't beat that technically.
So I picked up Yakuza 0 to just try playing something else instead because we wanted to just kind of hang tight and play games one night. And it was pretty fun to start. I mean, I only got through like the first hour or so, and it was a lot of cutscenes and things. But so far, it seemed pretty interesting. I don't know how far I'll actually go with it. I haven't revisited it since I played it that one night. And then what else? Oh yeah, so AGDQ. I just want to talk about that a little bit during my what I played this week time. There were some amazing runs this year that are totally worth checking out. The first one that really stands out, and I mean there were so many that I've forgotten a bunch of great ones, I'm sure. Peanut Butter the dog played and beat Gyromite. So, his owner, who came back later in the week and did his own speed run, he has this Shiba Inu named Peanut Butter, and he made this custom like controller because Gyromite was like Rob the Robot game, and so you would use Rob to control the game, and it's just kind of like you're hitting the blue button to make the blue pipes go down, or releasing it to make them go back up. Or the same thing for the red button and the red pipes. So he just has his dog like paw on the pad and then release and get a treat. And he got him all the way through the game. It was fantastic. The first dog to speedrun a game.
I have
live.
to watch that. I got to watch that for sure.
Yeah, it was so good. The next one that I saw that was truly amazing and probably worth like a sub on Twitch. I can't remember. I didn't write down his name. I think it was like Drumstar or something like that. But he did a drum % Mario 64 speedrun. He's this crazy drummer guy who got somebody to help him out over the internet and hook his drum kit up to an N64 for controls. And he did a 16-star speedrun with like backward long jump tech and all the things that you would see. He did a 16-star run in 24 minutes on a drum set.
Jesus.
Yeah, it was incredible.
Yeah, I got to watch this.
Yeah, that was great. And it opened my mind up, and I was like, you know what? In the future, like, the easier it becomes to link technology to other things, you could get people playing games in ways that we never imagined. Like, imagine doing like a flute speed run. Like, if you could hook up a drum, you could probably hook up a flute.
Pretty sure they have electronic flutes.
So it's like there's probably no end to what you could control a game with and just use your own skills that you have to get there.
What about an electronic ocarina to beat Ocarina of Time?
I'm sure it could be done.
We called it out here first.
Yeah,
if it hasn't already been done.
Those were two of the weirder, more amazing ones. And then one that really stuck out to me, too, from the last day. So there was a bid war between doing a Sekiro or an Elden Ring. And Elden Ring won. And he did it in like, gosh, I think it was like 25 minutes or less.
Jeez.
No combat. It's just all using like zip glitches to like just zip from one part of the map to the other, and the floor drops out and the boss just dies.
Oh, I've seen that one.
Yeah, it was incredible. He got like all the way through the game with like no combat, just going into corners and poking at a wall or a space and then flying across the map. It was incredible.
That's hilarious, man. Yeah, I got to watch some of those. There's probably some really good ones that I didn't see.
Yeah, I mean,
that one I have seen, though.
Yeah, they raised a ton of money. They played a lot of great games. It was so cool to see a lot of... Now that I've been watching it for a number of years and I've gone back and watched VODs on a bunch of videos from past events that didn't get the chance to see live. It's cool seeing like some of these games evolve and seeing some of the same people come back and just how much this event has grows and kind of what's behind the scenes at some of it. I would really love to be able to go to one at some point. And I don't know, every time I watch these, like the way these people talk about the games and getting into it, and it just seems like such a fun thing that I would like to really try to find something. So I don't know if anybody listening has any suggestions. I know they say to start with something that you really like, but what I really want that I'm looking for a framework for is probably something like retro that's like a little bit easier to like play or emulate on something, just to get the hang of it or work with it or whatever. But maybe something that's got like a decent like introductory start time of like 20 to 30 minutes and then like an ideal time of like 15 or under. That way I can like start with something that's like, I just don't want to try doing a speedrun that's going to take me 2 hours to sit down and do once I've optimized it, because that means that I'll be starting at like 8 hours before then.
See if you can do Jaws on the NES.
Jaws on the NES. I was thinking about Blue's Clues, honestly. I don't know how long that game is or who runs it, but maybe I could get a Blue's Clues speedrun going.
So that'd be hilarious.
They did a Bluey at this year. I don't know if your son watches Bluey, but
we do. We're familiar with it.
Yeah, so they did a Bluey speed run.
Nice. You should do Peppa Pig. I'm sure that was on there too, though. No, man. So look up Jaws on the NES. I'm sure you have it on your preservation devices at home, and it's a super short game. I want to say it's under an hour.
That or I was really looking at Monster in My Pocket. We all know how Ryan feels about Monster in My Pocket.
That'd actually be pretty cool, though, to speedrun that. Yeah. All right, well, let's... did we have a discussion topic this week?
Nope, we didn't.
No, we did not. Is there anything that crossed your mind that we should
we can talk about what we're going to be talking about this week. So this week in the news, there was a lot, but this is what we're covering. Microsoft is getting ready to release games for Sony and Nintendo consoles. Game is getting out of the pre-owned games game, and we should all be asking ourselves the big question, how long will we really own our games?
Sounds good. Well, I guess let's dive into it then. Yeah, I didn't have any like discussion topics per se.
Yeah, so nothing burning in a hole in my pocket either.
Yeah, or maybe a monster. Okay, so sorry.
Oh, there's a fire monster in my pocket.
Look at that.
That's what that is.
I was thinking of Frankenstein, but okay. So the first one here is Microsoft confirms plans to release first-party games across all platforms, including PlayStation. This is by Muhammad Ali Bari at Twisted Voxel. So yeah. Basically, we have seen a few things out there, little hints and such like, God, what's the, I don't know why, I just had like a brain fart all of a sudden. The rhythmic game, Hi-Fi Rush, right? So Hi-Fi Rush apparently, when it was first being created or before it was released, had, ratings information for PlayStation on there and other consoles. So people have seen that and are like, oh, that means Hi-Fi Rush is coming out. And there wasn't a confirmation, but now we're getting more information from Xbox representatives that they are looking at other platforms to put these games on. And so like Brian said, and myself here, including PlayStation. So, I think when I really think about this, it makes sense. And it goes back to what we've been saying many times in the past. This is likely the last Xbox console, or at least I've been saying it. And Microsoft is really going to start digging into this big studio persona.
It's definitely not the last Xbox console because they've already basically announced that they're going to start the next gen in 2027. So there's at least one more after this. We don't know what the size and shape and modem will be of that. Like that might not have any physical games on it at all.
Maybe
it might just be an alternative box you can play to buying a PlayStation.
Well, and so we saw things a long time ago with something that could be put into the TV that would allow your TV to play
that little thing Phil had on the background in some of those like webcasts that he did.
Yeah, so like alternative, like so when I think console, I think like big brick console that can put discs and all of that. Like,
that's only half the consoles now.
Yeah, exactly. It's
true.
So
so you can't put a disc in half of the Xboxes, you can't put a disc in half of the PlayStations, and you can't put a disc in any Nintendo.
Well, you can put a cart. So cart and disc. You know what I mean. Physical media. So point being is that we have seen hints of this over the last year and a half of they're buying up these big studios. They're working kind of close with Nintendo here and there. When it comes to what we said that, those specs that were released a long time ago are really, I guess, trademark filings and such for a specific device that could go into a TV. Like all of these different things have been put into market as hints in a sense that like this is coming. Like I can see Microsoft being the big publisher that is putting out all these games across all of these different companies. We're going to see, we'll see Game Pass just as it is with Netflix, right? All the TVs will have access to it. Your game consoles will have access to it. Your phone will have access to it. Like you're just going to be able to play Game Pass wherever you go, and Microsoft games will be there. And in terms of physical media, if it still remains in the next generation or 2 generations, their games will be produced as likely Xbox Studios, whatever it may be, and that'll be out of market as well. That's how I see the future going with this.
Yeah, and I mean, we're going to have kind of some similar discussion across a couple of these articles today, but one thing I'll bring up here and now is, Xbox, they play on a different timeline than what you and I think of, but it's not so unsimilar. So, Xbox is not necessarily focused just on what's happening here and now, but how they can take advantage of the marketplace in the future. Them being primarily a software company, and that's what they're comfortable with, once they get away from having to compete for and take market space and attract, they just had their Xbox Developer Direct last week. Lots of great games shown off there. Lots of first-party internal studio things. That's what they're really focused on. But they did take a moment during that time to showcase the new Mana game and their partnership with Square that they're really trying to push forward because they've been at such a deficit with, JRPGs, internationally, but they have a really poor, buy-in rate in like the Japanese marketplace. So once they don't have to worry about competing for space and being the box that's in the house, and they can just get back to being a software company and getting their titles out everywhere and just making money off of selling titles, like that's going to be a way easier way to get into, the Japanese market and into people's hands and get them playing their games, as opposed to trying to get them to pay that upfront commitment to getting a whole nother console just to get access to a few games.
Well, think about the cost savings as well. You don't have to produce a box now, right?
Yeah,
you don't
the
have to deal
R&D
with
savings alone.
Yeah, you don't have to deal with any of that anymore. It's more so how do you advertise Game Pass, right? How do you get
You don't have to take the flack for making decisions anymore. Like what's backwards compatible? What's all the things that people complain about running like Xbox Live. Like I complain all the time about the tier list and stuff between Game Pass. But like if it was just out there, that's whoever owns the box's problem.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. It makes so much more sense for them to go that route. And I was just thinking about this as we're talking too. It's what would the future have looked like if the original Xbox had a DVD drive added to it as well?
Didn't it?
No. As far as I know, it didn't.
Oh.
I mean, maybe it did. Maybe
I thought you could buy that controller.
You could, but I don't think it was. I mean, look it up. I don't think it had a DVD drive. And then really, because that's the big thing that everybody brings up, right? Is when it comes to PlayStation 2, the major reason that people bought it and how many were sold is because it had a DVD drive, right? Like that's why it was in so many households. So if Xbox had that same type of hardware, would it have...
You need the Xbox DVD movie playback kit, remote and receiver, as the console didn't play DVDs without it.
There you go. So, in terms of turnkey and being able to be, an easy plug-and-play situation, PlayStation 2, of course, had the upper hand there. Microsoft had its hoops and things they had to go through to make it work. So, if Microsoft would have had, let's just say, even footing with PlayStation, what would we be looking at today in terms of market share? I do question that.
Yeah, it's...
Because it's not like PlayStation to PlayStation 1, and then Xbox came out to PlayStation 2. So it's not like there was a major... Like, yeah, they had a foothold in the market because of the amount of consoles sold in comparison to the N64. But a third player coming in with the Dreamcast, like, what does that market look like if even both of those, even if Dreamcast has a DVD player, what does that market look like?
Well, but I mean, like, so the 360 was like the most successful Xbox console.
Yeah, and what's funny enough is the PlayStation 3 was the worst performing PlayStation console, and it still beat out the best performing Xbox console.
Yeah, so it's like Xbox has been in this position, and they've been very open with it over the last year, saying, hey, we're not number one. We're not number two. We're like barely number three in this market when you compare us to Sony and Nintendo and like the numbers that they do. And like, there are people that are like really hardcore Xbox people, but I just feel like the table they're eating off of is not equal to the table that Nintendo and Sony fans are eating off of. And they've done a lot to change that in the last few years, and they're really starting to ramp that up a lot more now, trying to get like one banger game out a quarter and support Game Pass and prop up everything. And just all of that really long-term goes the way of being a publisher, getting those games on other things. Because besides just Hi-Fi Rush, there's been a lot of rumors lately of Sea of Thieves, which is hugely popular, one of those live service games that hit and stuck and has done really well. I played some of that one myself, and I really enjoyed my time with it. They've done a lot of cross promotions over the last couple of years as well. So getting that out, that would fit so perfectly on Switch and PlayStation to bring more people into that ecosystem and connect them with their, other people that are playing on Xbox, and maybe get them to push towards looking at other titles in the future that they haven't been able to play because they've been walled off.
Yeah, and and physical media in general has not been really a strong point for Microsoft regardless. I mean, I don't know if you saw recently, but apparently Walmart is going to be axing their Starfield copies. Physical copies of Starfield are actually going to get reduced down to 3 cents a pop, and they're going to be trashed. Like, that's happening soon.
I kind of want to get one.
They're not going to sell it at 3 cents. It has a sale block on it. I've gotten lucky a few times in the past. You find an associate that doesn't know any better, and they're saying, oh, well, that's weird. It won't let me sell it. Oh, well, it says 3 cents right here. I should be able to buy it, right? Like, generally, if you find somebody that doesn't know, you can buy it, but it's very rare. Usually,
just
send it a memo.
slip them a Washington, tell them to keep the change. And I'm talking about the hard Washington.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
That's a 22-cent tip.
That is a 22. I mean, you think about it. That's like, what, 10 times, you're making 10 times profit there. In fact, sell me 4 copies of Starfield and I'll give you 4, maybe a paper Washington. Yeah.
My God, I would love to walk into a store with a dollar bill and walk out with like 30 copies of Starfield.
Yeah, I mean,
here you go, my good man.
Well, that's how I got copies of Octopath Traveler a few years ago. I got them for $10 a piece because they were reduced.
Oh, you
pricing.
got me one too.
Yeah, I picked you up one for $10. So, but yeah, so physical media not the strong suit for Microsoft. But let's look at our next article here, which is Tom Gherkin at BBC, and it looks like Chris Valance as well on this one. So, Game to stop selling pre-owned titles, not GameStop. Game, the UK-based retailer for used video games. So basically they're GameStop.
Yeah, I had heard about this earlier this week, and then when I was putting the outline together, I turned to John like gobsmacked in my face, thinking that I read GameStop and missed some huge announcement.
Well, so when I pulled up the article the other day, that was the first thing that went through my mind. I was like, whoa, wait a second. Like, what's happening here? And I actually clicked through, and as I'm reading the article, I'm like, oh, it's not GameStop. It's some company named Game. But I think it's still relevant for here in the U.S., with the main reason being, if you have a major retailer across the pond that is not going to be selling pre-owned titles here pretty soon, that's going to spread.
Well, I mean, forget just pre-owned. Like, Best Buy's already talking about not selling new games.
And Walmart as well.
Yeah, so it's like games, it's so crazy that they can be the biggest media on the planet, and you're not really going to be able to get your hands on it. And I know that they still sell DVDs to whoever still buys DVDs, because those people exist. They're not me anymore. But this is, I don't know, this is one of those things that we're all going to kind of have a reckoning with over the next 10 years, like what you're going to be able to physically buy and not anymore, based on, what they're deciding is worth printing. Like, you may still be able to get like physical special editions for games and stuff, but those don't even come with the discs now anyways. You'll just get a code for the game with it. But I keep hearing this argument, and it is represented in here because they have a rivalry with a company called CEX, that sells like used electronics and the like, so including pre-owned games and stuff, and they're giving all that business up. And I've heard people say the same thing about like GameStop here. So if they stopped doing the used game marketplace, I mean, they're basically giving up that entire revenue stream and every aspect of it to, I mean, in the US here, mom and pop shops and like chains like Bookman's and whatever might be your, regional equivalent of whatever Bookman's is. But like, there's not any national big chain buy and sell kind of place for that type of media here once you get rid of GameStop.
Yeah. And it's unfortunate too, because like GameStop generally with their used prices, they kind of set the tone, right, for what those games are valued at in a used market standpoint, along with eBay to an extent. I mean, it depends on rarity of the title. But if you start letting places like Bookman's and mom and pop shops kind of control that narrative of like what the game is worth in the used market, that's going to really mess things up for collectors out there for used titles. I mean, I speak from experience on that. I mean, you and other collectors that are listening too. I mean, you go into some of these mom and pop shops and they're 20-30% above eBay prices, right? Because they kind of have to be to an extent. But when you go into a GameStop and you're looking for a decent title, you're going to get a decent price most times for that game, or if you go on eBay, you might find it for a decent price on there too. But mom and pop shops, I mean, it's small businesses. They got to make up the money somehow, right? So their prices are generally higher, which is going to suck if the majority of used games are coming from those types of shops, unfortunately. And I love mom and pop shops. I love supporting local, but sometimes the prices are outrageous.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, so let's go into this next piece here. So should we give up owning games? And this is a number of people. Looks like it's Tanur Hussein, Lucy James, Richard L. We have Jean Sepke, I think it is, and Jess Howard, along with Tom Caswell at GameSpot. This was a lot of contributors to this particular piece. So if you want to tee this one off here.
Yeah, so this was kind of inspired by some conversation apparently from the GameSpot staff talking about, some discussion with Ubisoft recently. And during this Ubisoft event, I mean, Prince of Persia Lost Crown is coming out. People are really excited for this, but there's no like physical game for this, and there's a few things that are not getting physical releases outside of Ubisoft recently, like Alan Wake, and that's kind of what they reference in the top of this. I'll kind of set the picture the way they do here, but they say, picture it's the year 2045, and you want to show your future partner, child, pal, your favorite game of 2023, Alan Wake 2. You've still kept your trusty PlayStation 5 around, waiting for nostalgia to inspire you to dust off the old console and boot it up once more. But as you do, you discover you don't have Alan Wake 2 installed on your system, and the PlayStation Store no longer supports PlayStation 5. So this is kind of the nightmare scenario that we're all afraid that Microsoft and everybody is rushing towards as quickly as possible, is getting out of that physical games media. I mean, basically the physical game is just a license for you to be able to play the title. You don't really own what's on there. But for all intents and purposes, the way that the law and reality work can be two different things. Like, you can own a game, put it on your computer, mod it, do all kinds of stuff. Like, as long as you're not selling it for profit, you're pretty much fine. So this is setting up that same conversation that we've all been having in our minds of, when is it going to happen? Like, when are we going to kind of be forced to draw the line, or have an internal reckoning of, all right, anything before 20XX is a game that I could potentially chase down and play. Anything after that is a gamble. And that's just kind of how the future will be until, they have some kind of perfect archiving of all digital content that exists for posterity, which, I mean, it could happen, but it's never going to capture everything.
Yeah. I mean, and to your point, right, if you download a game and it's on your system, do you have to have server access to play it, right? And that's also something to consider, too. 10 years from now, those servers are down, right? And so, okay, well, now I guess I'm not playing, this game, even though it's installed on my computer, because I have no way of accessing it, right? I just can't play it anymore. I mean, unless you had your own server, I guess. But it does open up a question of like, how easy is it also going to be to play some of the, or how hard is it going to be to play some of these games in the future, right? Even if you can, let's just say hypothetically, you can make your own server, you can do all these things. The hoops that people will have to jump through to play certain games is going to be ridiculous. So it would be great if they could have some sort of like archive of digital games where you can play them and whatnot. But I just don't see them doing that. I see them making it as difficult as possible to be able to make as much money as they can. You know, and I guess one other thing to kind of point out here is that with the, like, as more companies begin to do this, a lot more of those companies like I Am 8-Bit, Premium Edition Games, Super Rare Games, Limited Run Games, and Barry Carenza Premium Edition had noticed a while back, like, as they start phasing out physical media, it actually hurts businesses like that are producing the physical media copies for some of these companies because, well, now your consoles aren't going to even support it at that point. So, like, there's a death of an entire other segment of the business, which is physical indie games as well. So it's just really disappointing what this future holds for used games in general. And, you know, Ubisoft is, you know, I think I'm along the lines of, like, at this point, boycott Ubisoft. If that's like their mindset and the direction they want to go, like, just start boycotting stuff. That was loud. You just dropped that phone and made a lot of noise here on the podcast.
I've been dropsies today. So yeah, it's I mean, but that's the thing, like, so it's Ubisoft who's not publishing one game now, but like, what are you going to do? Just boycott everybody that plays games and then never play games again because they don't release physical copies?
Boycott Ubisoft. Like, them specific. Like, if they're not going to be releasing physical
but
copies,
they
like,
do release some physical copies. It's just not this one game.
If they go into this mindset of like, okay, it's.
But are you going to do that for every company and just never, like, once they stop selling physical games, you're just not going to play new games anymore?
I got 2,000 games, dude.
You just bought a digital copy of Palworld.
I did because I wanted to play it on my PC specifically.
So, okay, there's a line right there. Like, you can't own a physical PC game.
But
it doesn't exist.
That's not a game specifically that, say, 10 years from now, I'm going to say, man, I really want to boot up that game.
I'm sure Palworld will be accessible 10 years from now.
I'm sure
if their success is going anywhere near where we think it is.
I'm just saying, like, in general, that's a title that if it disappeared off face of the earth, I wouldn't care, right? But there might be other people that care. Right. And so it's up to them, like, if they want to boycott it or not. With Ubisoft, I think it's more so the dangerous mindset of like, we're just not going to do physical anymore. Like, PC and Steam,
but it's going to happen.
But a lot of the games that are on PC and Steam and Epic and such, right, they go in with the mindset of like, this is just going to be a digital only title. And PC has been digital only for many, many years. When you think about PlayStation consoles and Xbox and Nintendo and going digital only, it's been physical for many, many, many years. And there's the aspect of backwards compatibility.
But Ubisoft isn't a first-party developer. They're a third party. They don't even have a box. Why should they need to make a game for a box that they don't even produce? Is that their fault?
Yeah, I guess I see your point on that. Yeah.
Like, it would be different if Sony was like, well, I mean, Xbox does it all the time now. Like, you can't buy a physical copy of Hi-Fi Rush, I don't think.
I don't know. Can you?
I don't think so. I'm pretty
Probably
sure
not.
it's digital
I don't
only.
think you can, yeah. But it wasn't that an indie-based game initially when it came out. So small publisher, not publisher, but small developer, no likelihood of publishing it as a physical copy. I don't know. But I see your point. I mean, I get it. And I do get it, and I get the reason why they would do physical media. We talked about it earlier. I mean, not physical, why they would do digital only. And it's the same point of Microsoft, right? Why release your games in a physical basis if you're going to make more money by doing it on a digital front? It makes complete sense. I totally get it. Now, as far as like new games in the future, there are certain lines that I draw. PC is one of them because there's certain titles that I just can't get on a physical console that I can play and own and all that. Like, it's got to be on there. But to that point, I could technically sell that Steam key right now for Palworld when I'm done with it. There's websites that I could sell the Steam key. And so I technically do own that game. I own that copy. So as long as the servers are good, it's all fine. So I don't know. We're in a weird phase right now where it's like there's still that love for physical media, but it's disappearing right before our eyes. And so do we let it go? Do we not? Do we fight for it? Which involves things like boycotting. It involves things like not purchasing, future games that are digital only and only purchasing ones that have physical copies. it's a very weird situation right now, I think, for a lot of collectors out there and a lot of gamers in general. All right. Let's dive into our inflation deflation for the week, and that's going to be Palworld. So it was developed by Pocket Pair, it was published by Pocket Pair, and it was released in, well, a few days ago, since we're recording this podcast. So January of 2024. It is an action adventure survival game. The reception is really a massive success. I think it's sold 1 million copies. It's got like 430,000 active players right now on Steam. Like, they're hitting all of their peaks right now. Of course, it's because the title is new. But we played a little bit of it, and in general, it's a survival in a world full of cute creatures and guns. It's pretty much Pokemon meets Rust meets anything open world, with the ability to kind of morph your character the way that you want them to look, and craft different items, capture the different pals in the world, use them to help you fight, and then of course there's co-op and such online as well. So there's a lot going for this game. It's not, just a ripoff of Pokemon as everybody claims it to be. I would say it's a ripoff of a lot of things. It's taking inspiration from a lot of different titles that are out in the market to create what we want as a Pokemon game, right? Like, this is what Pokemon should be. It should be crafting different things, which you kind of get to an extent with like Arceus and such. Being able to craft different items, go out into this open world and capture different Pokemon. But this, you're beating these creatures, these pals, like with your fists or any weapons you have. You're crafting essentially a Pokebox for them to heal. You're crafting a station where you can make different things. There's a lot of survival aspects like Rust, where you're punching trees to get wood, punching stones to get stone, and so on. So there's a lot of cool elements there for the survival component. And even one of the levels that we fast warped to was cold. And, as your character is freezing and losing health, it's like, oh, I see a fire. Let me run to that fire because it's nighttime, it's cold, etc. And you had to take those certain steps to make sure that your character was fine. So in what we played, dude, I know we only played like 30 minutes of this game, but I felt that I got a lot out of this to say that this is a game that I'm very interested in jumping into further. It's a game that has a lot of elements that I've grown to love. I love survival. I love crafting. And, I grew up in an era, as did you, of loving Pokemon and capturing monsters and using them to fight. And this has a lot of that already built in.
Yeah, I think that when people talk about Palworld as just being like a Pokemon ripoff or something, we may have kind of had some impression of that leading into its release. But, having played it, and I'm sure, having seen a lot of it out there now, we can really say that, the Pokemon-esque aspect of it is just a small portion of the game. This is so much more like so many other games than Pokemon. The fact that there's monsters running around that you can catch in, that's a genre, Like, Pokemon may have been the one that blew it up, but I don't even think Pokemon was really the one that started that genre. So, like, by this point, like, what this game is like way more survival crafting kind of game with like a Pokemon element thrown on top. Kind of like when they had like the Pokemon Minecraft mod back in the day. Like, that's more the experience you're getting here. From everything I've seen, the Pokemon don't evolve. So that's a whole track that Pokemon did that this game doesn't. It goes the breeding route instead, which I think like the Monster Hunter games or Dragon Warrior Monster games do. So, maybe it has more in common with those games than Pokemon, honestly, because you're like fighting against monsters yourself. Like, that's a lot more Dragon Warrior than Pokemon. You never run up and punch a Pokemon. So I think that this game is, just first of all, applause to how well their launch has been and how much, success and word of mouth and just like, I don't know what their marketing budget must be behind this, but like, I definitely have seen a lot of it over the years leading up to this release, and for it to be hitting this huge and not flopping in spite of like some major studio releases like Redfall and I don't know, any number of things last year that should have done way better than what actually happened based off of our initial looking out at it. It's really surprising. And yeah, when me and John were playing it, I was like, this is easily something I could just sit down and do. Like, I could just keep punching rocks and check marking off things and eventually get to the point where I've got like a human farm selling off parts.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely want to dive into it further and see more of like the single player mode and what that's all about. My friend Justin, actually, who's been on the podcast, he picked up a copy of this too, and so he was just asking me, he's like, when are we playing? Right? So I don't know anything about the co-op. I mean, I kind of went into this blind, only knowing, hey, this is really hyped up. It's just blowing up the servers. Everyone's excited about it, and it was like, all right, this is a game that's on everybody's mind. Let's talk about it. Let's play it and see what the hype is about. So I think we'll talk more about this, and or I'll talk more about it, I guess, in the near future once I can kind of dig into it. But as I've stated in the beginning of the episode and other episodes, my mind right now is continuing to play Tales of Symphonia and dive into that further. Okay, so let's go into brass tacks here, which is honestly very short since it just came out.
Yeah.
So where's it available? It's available on Game Pass, and it's available on certain tiers of Game Pass, and then you can get it on Steam, Epic, all that good stuff. It doesn't have a physical release right now. Digital PC, so Steam, it's $29.99, but there's a sale right now until January 25th, and you can use a code that we don't have, so it's a free code that's on there. I'm just kidding, there's no code. You just go, it's $26.99, and you dive in, it's advertised at that price point on Steam, and that's what I picked it up at. If you want to spend $31.99 is what I think it was, you can get the DLC, which is the soundtrack for the game, added to that. So if you want to support them for a little more money, you can do so in that respect. I just did the $26.99, and I'm excited to see what more of this game holds. As far as a rating for inflated or deflated, I mean, we didn't play a whole ton, but I would say right now it's just right.
I mean, it's the only price you can get it at.
Yeah.
So, I mean, unless you want to wait out for like a Steam sale next year or this summer or whatever.
Well, let's look at this point. Like, people want to compare it to Pokemon, right? So if you're paying $60 for, in my opinion, a very subpar, open world type game where you're catching monsters and doing whatever else story-wise is involved in Pokemon, you're paying $60 for that. This game is $26.99 right now. It's normally $30. I would say it's actually deflated. Mm-hmm. You're getting a lot more in this title than you would get in any other Pokemon game. Graphically, does it leave something to be desired? Yeah, I would say that this is not exactly the most graphically amazing game. Like, we put it on epic settings on my computer, and it was like, okay,
it looked good.
It looked good, yeah, but it wasn't like mind-blowing, right?
Yeah,
I mean,
it's not a Final Fantasy game.
Yeah. So, I mean, graphically, it's all right. It's not bad. And it worked just fine. So I would say deflated. I think that this is a title that on any console, if Nintendo had this stamped with the Nintendo approval or seal or whatever it may be, it would be $60 all day long, no questions asked. So I think $30 and right now $26.99, totally deflated.
Yeah. Sounds good to me.
Yeah. All right. Well, this has been episode 270 of the Game Deflators Podcast. We're going to be reviewing something else next week. We'll decide at a later time. But my name's John.
I'm Ryan.
And thanks for listening.